Today I have the honor of speaking with Mukasa Dada, formerly known as Willie Ricks of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Listen as he shares with us his incredible experiences during the Civil Rights Movement as he takes us on a walk through history. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. So tell me a little bit about your life growing up before you got involved with the Civil Rights Movement.
I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My parents was from North Alabama, and they lived in an area. My father lived in an area called Rickses. All the white people named Ricks, and all the Africans were named Ricks. And you know how we got our name. Man named Ricks bought us off the slave ship in Jamestown, Virginia, and carried us to North Alabama. They converted all their slaves to the Church of Christ, and my family grew up singing hillbilly songs in church. And my parents picked cotton and worked in the cotton fields, and later moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I used to travel back to Alabama and pick cotton and chop cotton when I was a young man. Worked from 6 in the morning to 6 at night, and you made $3 a day. They called it you work from can't to can't. Can't see in the morning till you can't see at night. And we got them $3 and what have you. And you were advised to say yes, sir, to all the white people and go in the back doors and those kinds of things. And that's the kind of life they lived in Alabama and probably Chattanooga, Tennessee also. And then in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I went to school with all of my friends. When I was a little boy in elementary school, every morning before school, I got a whipping because I was a minute late. I had a sister that walked real slow, and we had to walk through the woods, and I wouldn't walk off and leave her. So when I got to school, they beat me in the morning, every morning, and started my day off. And then I stayed I was in school, and by the time I was in the 5th grade, I had very, very bad eyesight, and that they didn't know it, and they flunked me in the 5th grade, flunked me in the 6th grade, and then later I have a twin sister, and they passed me to the 7th grade, and I went to another school, and in this other school, by the time I got there, I was not interested in no classroom kinds of stuff. So I started just doing different things. And then I quit and went to the streets and hung out in the streets and what have you. And later, I got a job waiting tables and serving white people. And I remember once I worked 93 hours. And that was some work serving those tables and made $63. I said, man, I went to the manager and said, hey, we worked all this and we supposed to make more money. He said, yeah, but what would the owner think if I gave some niggas more money than this? I said, yes, sir. And thank you, sir. And I went back in the hotel from being a nice little guy. I went back in the hotel and I used to serve alcohol to the guests when we have a party. And from that day on, I served 1 barrel of alcohol for the guests, and I was still 1 barrel. And I made up my salary from taking out the hotel. I thought I had a hotel down the street because I had half of the hotel down the street where I stashed my stuff. But then while I was in the hotel, they introduced me to the pool hall. My friends worked in there and went to the pool hall. And I started hanging in the pool hall and stayed there a long time. And that had a great time in that leisure shoot pool and what have you. And then shortly during that time, by the time my sister them got to the 12th grade, I started going to school every day. I go in the morning until evening. I was not a student, but everybody thought I was, including administration. So I was there every day. And that shortly during that time, the sit-in movement started. At Raleigh, North Carolina, some students went and sit down in the white area of what we call a 10-cent store, Woodwork. And when they sit there, they were put in jail. And when they put them in jail, a movement emerged. Students from all over the South and began to support that in demonstration. They would leave and walk off their school and go down to the nearest white public restaurant and sit down and ask for food, ask for Coca-Cola. What we mostly asked for, Coca-Cola or hamburger. We probably couldn't afford that. And but the movement kicked off from there and it grew. Now at that time, remember you had to go in the back doors. You couldn't try on clothes downtown. Black African could not try on clothes, and we could not ring cash registers. You're supposed to say yes sir to the white folks, all kind of stuff like that. And that they didn't pave our community. Dr. King used to like to say, where the pavement ends, the black community began. We called it across the tracks. And that's where you could see the difference in the living of people. We lived in shacks with no basic outhouses and had wells here and there. But that was basic across the South. And that now the sit-in movement kicked off. When the sit-in movement kicked off, students all over began to sit in. And I was, my sister knows we're at Howard High, and I was there with them. So we began to rouse the students up and say that we're going down there and we're going to sit at this restaurant. And we went down to the Cresses, they called it, and we sit down. There was about 10, 12 of us, and we were attacked by a mob of people. And them white boys beat us up. We had to fight to get out, but we fought. And that they bagged us up to an area called 9th Street, and that was the back door of the building was right across from where our community was. So we made it out and we bagged up to 9th Street, and we began they threw a few balls and we threw a few back, but we said we'll be back tomorrow. And the next day, the word got out, and when all the students, when we at the school, you ride the bus, and at downtown, that's where you change bus to go to our area. And we got all the students came and everybody went downtown. And back them days, the Coca-Cola was a little glass bottle. So everybody bought them a Coca-Cola when they'd have something to throw in the fight. And that we went downtown, and the whites met us there, and it was about maybe a couple thousand of us, hundreds of us, and hundreds of them. And we went downtown breaking windows and what have you, and we had a fight, and then we backed up down to the community where we live was called 9th Street, the main African community, black community street. And we backed up there. We the police came, fire trucks came. We threw bricks and balls at the fire truck. And a police tried to arrest or attack somebody. And and when they attacked someone, tried to attack us, we started throwing bricks at them. And the police got hit. Oh, I think about 50 bricks might have hit him. And he pulled out his gun and started shooting in the air. He didn't hit us, but he started shooting. And so Chattanooga was the first city to go up, sit-in movement to go up in rebellion, go up into what we call riots. So we fought. And then shortly after then, when we did that, we made national headlines that we were fighting, and Dr. King and his staff and NAACP and all these people, they rushed to Chattanooga to have a meeting with us to teach us about nonviolence, which didn't make sense to me at that time. And that they had a meeting in the church where all the students came, and the civil rights leaders were there, some of them. And they gave us a lesson in nonviolence. So when they spit on you, hit you in your face, you don't fight back. And then they had one man there who gave us the demonstrations. And he was slapping us and saying, don't be nonviolent, don't hit back. And I said to this man, I was sitting in the crowd, I said, let me slap you. And he said, come. He tried to embarrass. Oh, come, you can slap me. And I went up there. Somebody said, don't go, you're trying to embarrass. I don't care. I went up there and I slapped that poor man. Looked like his head spun around. But from that day on, I used nonviolence. And and shortly after then, Dr. King told me to say, and his staff said that a new organization is being formed. And it's just all the students that's demonstrating and protesting are coming together. And they're coming together to form a youth group or organization. And we don't want you in my organization because your reputation is so strong with being a rabble-rouser that we feel you'd probably be better in SNCC. So Dr. King called, and him and C.T. Vivian called this group, SNCC had just formed, and they called this group and said, we have this dynamic person. They gave me a good. So when I got to SNCC, I'd been recommended by CT and Martin, and that so they had a meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina, where they formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And it was a lady by the name of Ella Baker that pulled everybody together. And matter of fact, she talked Dr. King out of $850 to finance the meeting. And when Martin came to the meeting, he wanted us to be a nonviolent, but a youth group for SCLC. But Ella Baker suggested to the students, you don't want to be under this group. You don't want to be under these preachers, Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy and all these preachers. You don't want to be under them. She had worked with them in Montgomery, and she said they were chauvinists and that you didn't want to work under them. You want your own personality. So from that, we started the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Students, and we were going to use nonviolent tactics, and we were going to coordinate what we do, and we saw ourselves as a committee. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was formed. And once we formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, we took got us a little office in Atlanta, and then we took all the different groups that came. We sent them different areas of the South. Okay. Some went to different areas of Mississippi, Alabama, South Georgia, South Carolina. And what we said we would do, every town that we go in, we would find the local leadership. If they didn't have local leadership, we would help create it. And we would create a local organization for the people. And our style of leadership, we would not be the leaders, but the people that we would bring into the organization in each little town, we would form an executive committee, and they would be the leaders, and we would be the advisors. And then we would form youth groups. And we formed these youth groups, and they would be the shock troops, the one that march, demonstrate, and protest, even though the elder people, the grown people would demonstrate and march at different times also. But the movement was born. When we went to Albany, Georgia, we formed the Albany movement. And it was made up of great people. Charles Sherrod was the leader there, or was a SNCC person there. And then we created local leadership with Dr. Anderson and C.B. King, Slater King, and others. And when we formed the Albany movement, the students at Albany State, they had walked off the campus and went down to the bus station and sit down in the front of the bus station, in the front of where the white people eat, and said they wanted a hamburger or a drink or whatever, and they were put in jail. And when they were put in jail, they were expelled from school by the black colleges. And that we said that since you've been expelled, they said, since we've been expelled, we'll be full-time freedom fighters. And that's how SNCC got its staff, because all across the South, when the kids would leave these black schools and go sit down in these public places where white people sit, the black schools were basically controlled by white people, and the black presidents and would expel the children from school. So we got a whole SNCC staff by most of the expelled students, and many of them would just quit, say, I want to be a freedom fighter, and they would quit. So now you have SNCC sending people to different places. In Albany, Georgia, we went there, the kids went to jail, and then we created a movement, and it kept marching, and every time we marched, they would put us in jail and meet us with violence and what have you. And then after it got really big, that a lot of people started going to jail, and we got real national attention, wanted to get more. They invited Dr. King to come in. And when Dr. King came in, he would come in, and they were the preachers, so they would style of leadership. Dr. King was the leader, and then all the preachers saw themselves as leaders. SNCC saw themselves as organizers, and that we had organized the people and mobilized them, and that now it get national attention. We brought King in, we brought Martin in. He led march and went to jail and got national attention worldwide. And then there we had conflict somewhat because the style of organizing. One, they were the leaders. One organization thought they were the leaders, and then we were the organizers, and we would say the local people are the leaders. And they had basically the same respect for us as they had for Dr. King. And that so we marched, demonstrated, went to jail. Also, our style of nonviolence. We said nonviolence is good as a tactic. Dr. King, though, said nonviolence was the principle. They wouldn't fight no other way but nonviolence. And we were young, and we would go out there and march, and they hit us, we take it. Unless they hit us too much, we were ready to throw blows, and we would. And if they follow us around the corner, we beat the hell out of them and think nothing about it. We'd ready to fight. So, but they saw it as a principle. You don't fight back under no circumstances. So that brought a little difference in us. So as we went down through the South, even in Albany, we demonstrated, protested, and got movements going across the South, people sitting in and what have you. And that we met violence. They beat us. In Birmingham, they put a bomb in the church and bombed the church and killed 4 little black girls. The Freedom Rides, where we got on the buses and rode down through the South on the Greyhound bus, a trailaway bus, and they would drag us off the bus in Montgomery and beat people really bad. Or when they got to Anderson, Alabama, they threw a bomb on the bus. And the bus was on fire, burning, smoke coming out the bus. And they tried to hold the door where we couldn't get off and suffocate in the bus. And that it was local police and Klan and whatever white groups come out. And that even the FBI's were participating with the police and the Klan to do this to us. And then when we went to Montgomery, the same Freedom Ride, they beat people. The people were laying in the streets. I mean, bloody. And that, but the people came and gathered us up and took us into their homes, and we had a mass meeting. And at the mass meeting, when we were in the meeting, hundreds of white people gathered around the church, and they were getting ready to attack it or burn it where we were in there. And Dr. King and those called the Justice Department and begged Kennedy and all of them to do something because our lives were in danger. And that in order to stop them from attacking us in the church, they had to send in federal troops to Montgomery to come to the church and give us protection. And then the bus, Freedom Ride bus, went on to Mississippi full of basic students from the North and South and integrated groups, went down to Jackson, and that's where they put the people in the buses in prison. They was in Parchment Prison, and the people in the prison was made to work, and they work until their hands were bloody. And then they told the students told the prison folks, we ain't working no more. And y'all can kill us or do whatever we want to, we ain't working. And they put people in solitary confinement and what have you. But then a mass movement out of Nashville and other places, people start coming till we fill the jails up in Mississippi and whatever. And but that was the Freedom Ride, and we were fighting for desegregation. And then we say, since these white folk doing us like this, the sheriff and the mayor and all these people, and they continue, we ought to register people to vote and vote them out of office. So we sent our organizers that was in Mississippi and South Georgia and Alabama, we said, y'all register people to vote. And now you have a direct, we call going to the theaters and the sit-in, we call that direct action, the sit-in movement. And now we're going to register people to vote. And we start going into the rural areas and cotton fields, telling people to register to vote. And we went into certain areas, like in South Georgia, we went into Dawson, into Terra County, into Lee County, Americas, and other areas in South Georgia. We would go to black belt areas, and we went to these areas and started trying to register to vote. They took offense to that. And in Albany, in Lee County, Georgia, they came by the house one night and machine gunned the house, and they machine Mr. James' house. And then the church that we met in and sung our freedom songs and encouraged the people, they burnt the church down. They burnt one in Sassa, Georgia, one on the Lee County Highway, and another one, I forgot the name of it. And in Dawson, Georgia, Terra County, we call it terrible terror. It was so bad. They would come and throw dynamite at our house and blow it up. And some days they would come by. If we take 2 or 3 people down to register to vote, they would come. They wouldn't ready to make us stand there for hours and wouldn't register us to vote. But tonight they would come by the house and machine gun the house and sometimes throw dynamite on the porch. And one of the SNCC people got shot. Jack Chatfield got shot in Dawson, Georgia. And then in Bob Moses, and those went to Greenwood, the Black Belt of the Delta, Mississippi, and they went down and started trying to register to vote. They were attacked. One day, Bob Moses and Jimmy Travis was getting in the car. White man came by and machine gunned the car and shot Jimmy Travis in the back of the neck. Came a fraction from killing him. And then they assassinated Medgar Evans. They assassinated Mr. Damon, came to his house and just started shooting in his house. He put his children and family, my wife out the back door and held them off with his gun, and they threw firebombs in the house and burned him up in his house. But there were many other, Charlie McParker in Poplarville, but there were many others and SNCC workers that tried to register people to vote. They put 3 of them in jail, Cheney, Swan, and Goodman, put them in jail, and then they took them out of jail and went out and lynched them, assassinated them, beat them, killed them, cut them up, and did all kinds of other things, and then buried them under a reservoir. And we had a mass movement and got mass attention because 2 of them was white, and Cheney was a little African boy, and that brought national attention. But in Mississippi, like SNCC would always do, it formed when we started trying to register to vote. We formed a state organization called the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and one of the leaders of that org, we had a lot of strong African women, but one of the personalities that people know was Fannie Lou Hamer, and Miss Hamer and many others. They protested and faced the maximum violence, and we challenged the government and everybody else to the violence that we were meeting, and that they continued to do it until we forced them. We kept doing different things, and John Lewis and those SNCC people, we were operating in about 100 different cities at the same time. So in any given area, we had 100 people in different areas marching, demonstrating, trying to register people to vote, and facing jails, filling the jails up, going to jails daily and what have you. And those things were happening. And then one thing that brought a lot of attention, we helped create the Dallas County voters movement in Dallas County, Alabama, which was known as Selma, Alabama. And John Lewis and SNCC had been there, and then they invited Dr. King and SCLC to come and give attention to what was going on in Selma, because wherever Dr. King came, the press came and brought attention to what we were doing. And that they came there, and when John Lewis and Hosea Williams and other SNCC people and other SCLC people and the local people of Selma, they decided to have a march. And they said that they were, because we met all kind of violence in Selma. It was very brutal, very dangerous, and very scary in terms of living or dying. Whenever you left home, you never knew, in most of these places, you never, when you look back, you would say to yourself, will I ever see this house again or see my friends again? That's how dangerous it was. So John Lewis and those decided to walk from 50 miles from Selma to Montgomery to protest the fact that we didn't have the right to vote and we were facing violence and being beaten and even killed, like they killed one of our workers, Jimmy Lee Jackson, and that we wanted to bring attention to it, and that we tried to march, but Sheriff Clark and Al Lingo, state police, they met the march, and they want horses with guns and all kind of weapons, and they want horses. And when we tried to march up Highway 80, they ran horses over the people, and they beat them and left people with concussions and all kind of other damage. And that John Lewis was one with concussion, so he was hurt, and they had to take him away and put him in the hospital. Now, in terms of we worked voter registration in Tuskegee, Alabama, and one of our workers who had been into the Army or the Navy and came back and joined the movement, tried to register people to vote and those kinds of things. He one night went into a bathroom that said at the bus station, it was at a gas station, bus station. He went into there and to the bathroom. They had a sign up said white only. They had them all over the South. And when he went in that bathroom and came out, the white owner of the bus or the gas station shot him in the head with a shotgun. His name was Sammy Young Jr. You could Google that and you'll see his body and all that kind of thing, or his history. And then after the Tuskegee, and then the march to Montgomery, we marched from Selma to Montgomery. After they beat John Lewis, we had big demonstrations and protests and what have you, and they surrounded the church and wouldn't let us march. They had sent police in the church and beat people up and beating people up in the streets and what have you. But we kept coming, and finally we marched from Selma to Montgomery. And when we marched from Selma to Montgomery, after they had beat us and whatever, we embarrassed the country. And this was the Democrats at that time down there, and especially all over the South, and the Republicans. They did the same thing and had the same philosophy toward us. They were the same people, and that they beat us and what have you. And Dr. King and them marched from Selma to Montgomery. And when we got to Montgomery, Dr. King made a speech, and Dr. King said in that speech that his dream, I have a dream speech, has been called a nightmare, and not a dream, but a nightmare. And he said that, but I still have a dream, and made a great little speech there. And we had marched 400-500 people to Montgomery. And these people, after Dr. King made his speech and other people, had to get back to their houses. So different people that came from different parts of the country had cars. They gave people rides and took them back to the rural areas where they lived. Well, on the way back, this guy who had participated in blowing up the church in Birmingham, killing 4 little girls, the guy who had participated in throwing a bomb on the bus, blowing up the Freedom Riders, his name was Roar. And also was riding in a car, and lady named from Detroit was driving, and she was a white lady, and she was driving some workers back to the area. And when she was driving the car, Jimmy Jones was in the car with her. Her name was Viola Luuzzo. And she was driving down the road, and the Ku Klux Klan riding together. And he was an FBI agent, and I worked with the FBI. And when they drove by Miss Luuzzo and started shooting in the car, a machine gun in the car, however they did it. And they shot Luuzzo in the head, and the other brother that was in the car turned over, and he played dead, and they jumped out of the car and ran over there, and they were going to shoot, but they said, oh, both of them dead, and they ran back, but Jimmy Jones was playing dead, and he jumped out and had to run through the woods and whatever to find somebody to say that the car had been shot in. And then after then, we that was in a county called Lowndes County, and when they went into Lowndes County, it was a very area, 80%, 89% black people, Africans, lived in the county, and they had one registered voter. And people lived basically as slaves in very primitive conditions. And they were very violent and disrespectful toward black people. They lived under apartheid, under segregation, under colonialism. And we decided to go in, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, and SNCC people decided to go into that area. So SNCC, a group of us went there. I think it was Stokely, Kwame Ture at that time, Ralph Featherstone, Bob Mance, Cortland Cox, myself, and some other students. We went there and we started organizing. We tried to get people to register to vote. And when they tried to register to vote, the owners of the plantations that they lived on put them off the plantation and tried to run them out the county. So we said, don't y'all leave the county. We bought a plot of land and we put them on that land. And we put them on that land and told them to stay, and we would bring them food, whatever. But the people in the community would help them. But they live in tents on that land. It's called Tent City. And when they lived in these tents, they would come down there at night and shoot in the tents. And that we got guns. So we formed an organization when we got there, a local organization called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. And we would be a part similar to the white man's organization, like the Democrats, Republicans. These were white people organization at the time. And we formed our organization, and it was going to fight for the right to vote also. And legally, they say you have to have a symbol. They one have a jackass, one have an elephant, and we chose to have a panther. And we chose a panther for the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. And we chose a panther for the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. The white press began to say, look, they got a Black Panther. They Black Panthers. And like that was supposed to be something bad or bad. And we said, yeah, we Black Panthers and proud of it. And that we became known as that's where the Black Panther Party started. And we became known as the Black Panther Party. And then they would come out there and shoot at us. So we got guns. We go out in the cotton field and start telling people about registering to vote. They would come out there shooting at us. So we got us some guns and carbine M1s and some maybe shotgun, a few pistols and whatever. And we would go out to the cotton field. We carry our gun too. And when boss come out there and start acting crazy or start trying to shoot at us, we would shoot back. Or we riding down the road and they jump behind us in their car and start shooting. We would start shooting back too. Boom, boom, boom. And driving them back. And that they were extremely violent. Once people got put in jail for having a little civil rights march, speaking out and participating in trying to register people to vote. They put them in jail in Haynesville. That was a county seat. And when they got out of jail, they were walking down the street, and a white man named Coleman come out of his store with a shotgun and laid this shotgun down right in front of a little girl and a Tuskegee student. And Jonathan Daniel pushed him out the way. And when he moved the girl like that, the bullet came right at him, a shotgun, and blew his guts out and killed him. And then in Selma, where John Lewis them had been. People came from around the country to help, and two men came out and saw these guys. Anybody that came and supported the movement, and especially white, they called them nigger lovers, and they killed them quick. And that they beat I forgot the name of the guys they beat and killed in Selma, but they did that. And so those are that's the atmosphere that the movement lived in. So now we started the Black Panther Party in Lowndes County, Alabama, and it became known because we had guns and we were using violence. And now national attention as a group in the civil rights movement with guns. And before there had been another group in Bogalusa, Louisiana. When they marched down the street, the white folk would call them niggers and mess with them, throw rocks at them, and what have you. The men there and women got together and formed a group called Deacons for Defense. And when the children would march on this side of the street singing freedom songs, oh freedom over me. Ain't scared of nobody because I want my freedom. And even had a song say, I love everybody. I love everybody. And they walking down the street singing those songs, and they would throw bricks and balls at them. And so the deacons formed, and what they would do when the kids marched down the street singing their freedom songs, they would march on the other side of the street with their guns. And they marched down the street also to protect their children. And that they became known for the Deacon for Defense. And then in Lowndes County, Alabama, we had picked up guns and became known as a group of SNCC people, SNCC people that had guns and was willing to fight. Now, up until that point, John Lewis was the chairman of SNCC. So after we was in Lowndes County, early on, go back a minute, when they killed Sammy Young Jr., we spoke out against the war in Vietnam. And they killed him on I think the 3rd or 2nd of January. And the next day we had a press conference. And we had a press conference saying that if a black man can go into the army, fight for the United States government, and then come back to America and can't piss in a bathroom behind a white man, we ain't got no business in the army. And we opposed the war in Vietnam. We officially opposed the war in Vietnam. And we called for people to refuse to go into the draft. So now we kicked off the anti-war movement and called for people to take into the streets. Now, people that was around Dr. King, they begged him not to speak out against the war in Vietnam, telling him, "You're a civil right. Don't speak out against that. You civil right. Don't speak out against America." And so those Uncle Toms that was around him and other kind of pressure that was trying to keep him away from that. But we put thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the streets, and the anti-war movement was going very strong. Now, early on, we also, John Lewis, Cleve Sellers, Jim Foreman, and Winky Hall, and maybe another person, we went to the South African embassy, and we knew about Mandela and the apartheid system, a racism, colonial system in South Africa, and how they had our people in slavery in South Africa. And we went to the United Nations, John Lewis, and we kicked the door open of the United Nations of the South African embassy. And we went in there, and man, we got in some blows. They started fighting and we started fighting. And they came and put us in jail in New York. And we went to, we was in the prison in New York, and when Harry Belafonte,
Mm-hmm.
Sidney Poitier,
Mm-hmm.
and Miriam Makeba, they a great South African singer. They came and got us out of jail, bailed us out of jail, and Miriam Makeba invited us to a concert, gave us ticket to her concert that night, and introduced us as, fighting for South Africa. But now we're involved in the anti-war movement, and we're now involved in the Africa movement. And now in exposing what was going on in South Africa, and we began to look toward Africa. And then by the next year, 1966, we're getting into, after they passed the Civil Rights Bill, and then they passed the Voters' Rights Bill. But after many people had been killed and assassinated there, we said some people had the attitude that how you going to just pass a bill and people being killed? They have fear in them. So James Madison, who had integrated the University of Mississippi, the first black man to go to the University of Mississippi, integrate the colleges, went into the school. They had riots, people got killed and whatever, but he became known as being a brother, the first brother to go into the white school. And when he went into these white schools, he became known. And then when they passed the Civil Rights Bill, he decided he was from Jackson. He decided to go walk down the streets in Mississippi, or walk through Mississippi with a sign that says, March Against Fear. Don't be afraid. Register to vote. And when he walked out there, a white man shot him in the back with a shotgun. And Dr. King and Floyd McKissick, Stokely Carmichael of SNCC, Floyd McKissick of CORE, Dr. King, SCLC, and others, Deacon of the Defense came. And we met at a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, the same hotel Dr. King, Lorraine died in, and said we were going to carry the march. And we decided to walk 250 miles through the state of Mississippi, telling people to have no fear and to be strong and to register to vote and demand our human and civil rights. And we started walking. There was much violence toward us. And on that march, we called for Black Power. And of course, me and Stokely decided we were going to do it, but I was the voice of SNCC in the fields. So I went out and said, we need Black Power. We need Black Power. And I was making speeches all over Mississippi. We marched during the day, and by night they had me sit up in different parts of Mississippi. Miss Fannie Lou Hamer and different MPL, not MPLA, but MFDP people would have me in different parts. I'd be out there. We need Black Power. If we had Black Power, they couldn't kill us. They couldn't murder us. They couldn't shoot us down like dogs. They couldn't blow up our schools. We'd be strong enough to defend ourselves. We could build better schools for our people. We could feed our people. We wouldn't have outhouses. We wouldn't be working sharecropping where you work all year long, and then at the end of the year, the white man tell you owe him money and don't pay you nothing. Putting our people in the jails and prison. We need Black Power. We are black. We are strong. And Black Power movement was kicked off. And we kicked off the Black Power movement. We started saying, we ain't going to say freedom now no more. We're going to say Black Power. And Black Power started getting stronger and stronger. And then some of the Uncle Toms on the march began to say, we don't need no Black Power. We don't need no Black. We try to tell them, shut up. We want Black Power. And Andrew Young and them started doing all they could do to try to keep us from saying Black Power. We want Black Power. And then they brought in white people marching with us. We told the white people, go home and organize your white people in your neighborhood, because we're going to carry this Black Power on. Mm-hmm. And man, the white people left the march, and we and Martin King and all of us, we were on that march together, and we were going out in them cotton fields and speaking to people. And on the back of trucks at night, we would park in different areas, and we'd make speeches from the back of the truck. And we were saying Black Power, and some of the people didn't want to say Black Power, including Dr. King. He was very leery of it for a minute. But we were saying Black Power. It was shaking the world. And that, what do they mean by this Black Power? What is this Black Power? But it shook the world. And then in one area, even though Dr. King, we were all fighting together, Dr. King one day led a march in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And when he led this march in Philadelphia, Mississippi, a white man in a truck ran right through the march and running over people. And the people went crazy. They just started turning the trucks over and fighting in the streets. And they had to get Dr. King out. But then that night, after Dr. King got back over here, the white people came into the black neighborhood and started shooting. And that fortunately that we had some young men down there that was waiting on them and knew they were probably coming, and they shot back. And one of the white people that came over there shooting, I think a couple of them got shot and one was killed. And that night in Yazoo City, Dr. King said to me early that day, he said, Willie Ricks, that's who I was at that time before I was Mukasa, I want you to introduce me and I'm going to introduce you. I thought that'd be good, Martin, no problem. And that night, the tension was growing, and I climbed on the back of the truck, and Martin King and Dr. Abernathy and his staff was sitting there. And when I got on the truck and where we make our speeches from, a flatbed truck and what have you, I got on the truck and I walked on the truck and said, Martin, stuck my hand out. Martin put his hand out, but he sort of snatched it back in a harsh way. I said, what is going on? And his staff was standing back there. They all had gotten mad at Black Power. All of them had got mad at Black Power. And when Dr. King made a speech that night, because I got up and said that when the white people ran over the truck in Philadelphia and hurt a lot of people, and then came in our neighborhood to shoot us, and we shot back, that's Black Power. We need Black Power. And Martin didn't sort of like that. Black Power was getting too strong. So Martin made a speech saying, ain't nobody gonna make me act like the Ku Klux Klan. Ain't nobody gonna make me act like George Wallace. Ain't nobody gonna make me act like Hitler. We don't need no red power. We don't need no yellow power. We don't need no white power. We knew where he was trying to come to. And when he got to say, we don't need no black power, but we had all our people standing right in front of him in his face, Black Power, Black Power. So now the tension was on. And the next city we went up in was Canton, Mississippi. And got to Canton, Mississippi, Dr. King March right before we got to Canton, we went into a city, and we said that we were going to use the courthouse, and the police blocked the courthouse. And when the police blocked the courthouse, Dr. King said, "Oh, this is embarrassing." And he said, "Where's Ricks? Where's Ricks?" And he called me, Ricks, get us up on that courthouse steps. And I was shocked that he had that, respect for like that. And I said, no problem. I just, come on, everybody. We just bum rushed the police and they bagged off. And we bum rushed and took the steps, and Dr. King made his speech and whatever. And then we got to, we were getting to another courthouse, and the sheriff said, "Y'all niggas ain't gonna use this courthouse." I said, "We can't use it. We'll burn that damn thing down there." And the sheriff say, "Nigga, our courthouse is fireproof." I said, "We'll blow that blow it up there." And so we had put that attitude, and the Black Power came with that attitude, with more militant. And then we went on to the next city. When we got to Canton, Mississippi, we were out there, and that day, Dr. King was always paranoid of me because he always thought that I had bricks and balls somewhere with a bunch of kids getting ready to throw bricks and balls in the march. So he always tried to keep me with him. So when we got ready, he got ready to go eat dinner. He asked, "Where's Ricks? Where's Rick? Come on, Ricks." And I remember we all sitting in this lady's house, and about 7 or 8 ladies got together and laid out a great little meal. And we all sitting in the living room eating and whatever. And in there. But then that night, we got on a big truck, and we were standing on the bed, and you can look at the movie Eyes on the Prize and look at 1965, 66, and you'll see the march. And you'll see when we got to to Canton, we were all standing on top of I think we were supposed to put up a tent. And we were all standing on top of a truck, right on the bed of it. Dr. King, Stokely Carmichael, Hosea Williams, and Floyd McKissick. And it might have been another person, and myself. And we were standing up there, and Dr. King, everybody getting ready to speak. And we looked up, and there were hundreds of police lining and surrounding the march. And Dr. King said, "Oh man, it's getting ready to be a major problem." And he called me and Hosea Williams up front. Him and Stokely Carmichael and Floyd McKissick called us up front and said, "Willie Ricks, you and Jose can't get hurt tonight, and you can't go to jail. We don't know what's going to happen to us, but if something happened, we need y'all outside where you'll be the organizers and the voice for us." So they asked me and Jose Williams to take the leadership if something happened to them. So we had to get off the truck and back off, and we stood over at somebody's house across the street from the yard, and within minutes they started bombing the park where the people were, and they bombed the truck where Dr. King was, and Dr. King fell off the truck. And that when I saw that bombing going off, we didn't stay out. We just ran back in to the truck, and we picked up Stokely Carmichael and Dr. King. It's a picture of me carrying both of them. And that Dr. King couldn't see, and he was just hurt from all that tear gas when they bombed us. And that you see us going through there, arguing, smoke everywhere and everything. But Dr. King was being strong, and Dr. King showed a great attitude, and that he was a warrior, and he was with us and understood. So then, after they bombed us in there, we went to Tougaloo, and that night James Brown came down at the end of the march and performed, came there in his jet and whatever and performed. But then the very next day, a lot of people came down and they called for white people to come back on the march. And when the white people came back on the march, they came down there with American flags. And I went out and told, "You can't come out here with no American flag. You got to take that." And that I started pulling flags. If any of them tried to stop me from getting it, I had a group with me. I just bust them in the nose and said, "Give me this damn flag." And took all the flags and took them over there and threw them in a ditch and threw some lighter fluid on them and set them afire. And then the press tried to accuse me of desecrating the flag. I said, "Damn the flag," and whatever. But then Black Power was out there now. And when Black Power got out there, the next big thing with Black Power was Detroit. Detroit city started burning. It started fighting in the streets. And the cry was Black Power. And they were burning down the city. And the whole city was on fire. And they were crying, Black Power. And they brought in armies and they shot down over 50 kids and put 20,000 people in just round black men up, putting them in jail and shooting down. I remember seeing an 8-year-old boy laying in the streets dead, but they were shooting them down in the streets. The United States government gave orders, shoot to kill. And then the Black Power Rebellion started going up in Newark and in Watts and all over the country, the LA and all over the country, every city began to go up and everybody be in the street saying, Black Power, Black Power. And all the civil rights people were scared to speak up, but SNCC spoke up. Stokely Carmichael was the chairman, and then H. Rap Brown, but they spoke up for the people. And when they spoke up, we Black Power, Black Power, Black Power. And that we became known as this militant group and whatever. And now when we formed the Black Panther Party in Lowndes County, Alabama, the people in New York, Philadelphia, and LA called and asked, can we form chapters? And we said yes. So we helped Hugh Newton, Bobby Seals, and those people in New York and other places form chapters of the Black Panther Party. So we started the Panthers in Alabama, but then when we came, put them together, they called themselves the Black Panthers for Self-Defense. And when they called themselves, we helped them get started and whatever. But remember, we would form organizations, and then when they get started, we step back and give them the leadership. So now the Black Panthers on their own, and we helped them. Matter of fact, we even sent them on their first international trip to Cuba and what have you, and we inspired them to keep going. They were our little brothers, and they did a good job. And then rebellions breaking out all over 125 cities on fire. And then after the cities caught on fire and rebellion, Black Power, we began to talk about Black is beautiful and talk about our hair, how we had this beautiful African hair, African nose, African lips, and beautiful skin and what have you. And we began to praise Black women and Black people. And they used to tell us we were ugly because we're Black and all that, which is bull. And we began to talk about that. We began to sing songs about freedom. I'm Black and I have beauty. What a rare thing am I. To have curls like a lamb, to be Black and beautiful. And we made up a lot of songs and we began to talk about Black Power and whatever. But all that came out. Now, one other point, that when we said Black Power, the first group to endorse Black Power was Fisk University students. They came and met with us, said, we want a Black Power conference on our campus. And when they said they wanted a Black Power conference on their campus, we said yes. So we all went there, and we went there for the conference, and all the leadership came from the Black Panther. Well, Black Panther was just getting started. Eldridge Cleaver, Kathleen Cleaver was there. And then Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, but SNCC people, and the Tennessee State students, Fisk students. And we came to have a conference, and then we talked about Black Power. And in the middle of the conference, the police shot a Black man, or a young man, in the back of the head. Bullet went through his neck and came out through his nose. And that conference, the word came in the conference. Police just shot somebody. And we got to the streets. There were so many people out there running and throwing bricks and balls at the police, just like now. And we went out there. At first, the people in the conference, they didn't know what to do. So they went out there and said, oh, no, you can't throw bricks. And I went out there, and all the ones, they were SNCC youth group, college student groups. I went out there and told them, said, wait a minute, you can't be saying to tell them not to throw bricks and balls. No, we can't throw bricks. I said, all y'all who said we can't throw bricks and balls, y'all fired. And all y'all who are throwing bricks and balls and firebombs, you're SNCC now. and I created a whole new staff. But the first school to go up in rebellion was Fisk University for the Black Power movement. And then at that Black Power movement conference, we said we got the students on these white schools, they got to do two things. They got to organize Black student groups, and that gave the birth of Black student unions. And we also, on these white schools, because Stokely Carmichael, when he would speak, he would say, y'all don't know your history. You don't know about Marcus Garvey, W. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, and he would name about Leron Bennett. He would name about 10 books. And the student thought he was a genius just because he knew the name of 5, 6, or 10 Black books. Because at that time, on all the schools, they were teaching about the colonialists, Lincoln, Washington, Jet Pilgrims, and all those kinds of books. And then when they get international, teaching about Europeans, coming to the great Europeans and all these philosophers and all that. And and we didn't know nothing about ourselves on these schools. So we demanded Black studies or African studies. And we went on those schools and started getting with those students and taking over the administration building. One school at Cornell, they took it over had machine guns or automatic rifles strapped around the chest with guns. We want African studies, but it scared this country so bad that they created African studies in all the schools in some form or fashion and gave it money, put $1 million in it, allowed people to take Black studies and study in Africa, travel to Africa and whatever. But it linked us up. So that was the birth of the Black Studies program that came out of the Black Power movement too. And then with Black Power and people fighting in the streets, anti-war movement, we helped the Vietnamese defeat the United States. We began to learn about imperialism and colonialism and even neo-colonialism, where they use your own people to rule and whatever, but hold guns on you and oppress you, where imperialism continued to come take your diamonds, your gold, your oil, your rubber, your zinc, and all the elements from your land. And that's what we exposed. And the countries that now began to speak out against that, we joined in with them. And we joined in with South Africa that was fighting against imperialism, apartheid, colonialism in South Africa. We joined in with Angola, who was fighting a gun battle, war, shooting down planes. Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Guinea-Bissau, and a great leader there named Amilcar Cabral had a group called the PAIGC. And then in Angola, and Frelimo in Mozambique, and then SWAPO in Namibia, and all over Africa. We joined, our movement joined in. They started talking about Black Power, and we started talking about Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism was the philosophy that put us all together into one movement. Pan-Africanism says that all Black people are Africans, all Africans are Black people, and we'll never be free until Africa is free. And now we began to look at Africa. We knew very little about it before. They began to teach us that Africa is the richest land in the world, full of diamonds, gold, oil, rubber, zinc, tea, copper, pearl, cobalt, manganese, and millions of other natural resources. And all the people of the world have to come, countries of the world, companies of the world have to come to Africa to get the resources in order to have their imperialist companies. And we began to learn about economic system, capitalism, an economic system where the rich get rich and the poor get poor. Under capitalism, there are always two people, slave and slave master, oppressor and the oppressed, and a have and a have not. And that's what they create. And when it go abroad, it's imperialism, and it does identically the same thing, rape all the other territories, create wars, assassinate all the different leaders that try to help their own people or don't want to go along with imperialism, want to do something to help their people. They assassinate them, drop bombs on them, like they did Iraq, like they did Libya, and like they're raping in the Congo, killing millions of people. And like they had done in Haiti, right now as we talk, like they're doing it, they tried to kill Castro 80 times, they say, over and over again, because Cuba, a lot of black people, they're Africans, and just very great human beings in Cuba. They took over Cuba, and when they took over Cuba, they had a revolution. They had a neo-colonial Uncle Tom there running the government. And when they took over Cuba, they created a socialist society. And when they created a socialist society, they took everything that the rich man had and gave it to the poor people. They took the big rich hotels and put schools in the hotels, so the women that was walking in front of that hotel as prostitutes and what have you, and hustlers out there, they told all of them to come into the hotel and put schools in the hotels and made doctors out to prostitutes, engineers, and extremely intelligent people, and gave every woman got free nursery for her pregnancy, free daycare, free schools all the way up to college and university, made doctors out of so many people. And then they told everybody live in the house. This is your house. And ain't no light bill, gas bill, water bill. All this is yours. And all our economy would go back to serve you and not to make one or two people rich and make billionaires, but instead we would divide our economy up with you. And Castro said we would share our economy with other people in the world. So they created doctors that would go all over the world and give people free medical care in different countries and help people solve diseases and crises and whatever. And then they took over the military bases that they left there, made universities out of them, medical schools, and they bring people in from all over the world, train them in the medicine in every country, black country and other country, train them to be doctors, great doctors, and then send them back to their countries to serve their people. And my son is one of those doctors, and that he's a great doctor. He's a great doctor, and it didn't cost one penny. So now we began to see what imperialism is doing, and that they use bombs, like they bombed Libya, which was a very rich and powerful country, very rich, and that they wanted to unite Africa into the United States of Africa, create an African bank, print African money and get rid of European money in Africa and make our money the most valuable money in the world, bagged by pure gold, since the gold and diamonds and coltan is in Africa, and let all that our resources bag our money and make it the most powerful money in the world. And the United States said no to that. And that's why Biden, Obama, Clinton, and the American imperialists went and bombed Libya, killed Gaddafi and thousands of other people, and they still killing them there, selling them into slavery and dropping bombs on them right now as we talk. And this is the work of the United States. And also they did the same thing in Iraq, Syria. They committed genocide on the Palestinians through Zionism. They committing genocide on the people in Yemen right as we talk, dropping bombs on them. And they trying to starve the people to death in Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe was one, Cecil Rose went there, killed over 65 million people, destroyed the whole country, put the whole country in slavery, destroyed the great Zimbabwe empire, robbed it for all its resources, and made the African slaves there. But in the 60s, they fought a revolution led by Robert Mugabe, and when they won their independence, white man had all the land. One white man had thousands of hectares of land, however it's divided, but extremely rich. And the Africans, who the land they stole it from, had no land. So when they fought a war and won their independence, at some point, they say, we want our land. How are you going to fight a war and fight for freedom and let somebody else keep your land? So when they started taking and collecting the land, telling the white man, you got to get off my land, and people started taking the land back and moving on the land, the United States and Europe was so mad that you took something back that the white man had stole, that they put embargoes on the country, made it, told everybody, you better not trade with them, and try to make it where they can't get food and medicine and the things they need to develop and survive daily, can't get in the country, causing millions of people to go hungry daily, causing millions of thousands of babies to die and daily. And this is what they're doing. And they're doing the same thing in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and anybody that want their freedom and try to stand up, the United States put embargoes on them, or they drop bombs on them. And they're dropping bombs all over the world as we talk today. So the United States is an imperialist power. Dr. King called them the greatest terrorist nation in the world, the greatest perpetrator of violence in the world. It's United States. United States is the number one gun runner. We ask, why are these guns in our neighborhood? Why are our children getting all these guns from? But they putting these guns not only here, they putting high powerful machine guns and bombs in all the countries of the world, and they're creating a circumstance where people don't talk no more and negotiate. Whoever got the biggest guns, whoever can blow up the most people and kill the most people, blow up the most buildings, then they're the ones that rule and direct. So United States try to move through might. So these people are international criminals. So when we look at what's going on with us here, we have to look at our people from a world perspective, not in the United States, because the United States is just a small area in the Americas. This is not America. This is the United States that's in the Americas. And there are other maybe 100 different countries in the Americas. And the United States try to dominate all of them. And they dominate them and train killers and military killers. They got a school in Fort Benning called School of the Americas. And this is where they train killers and military killers. And they go back and hold guns or blow up their country and take it over with the help of the United States and help the United States rob the people completely of their economy and be dominated by the military, completely dominated. And when they do that, the people are so poor that thousands are leaving their houses because they never seen a clean glass of water, never seen a toilet, never had a good, decent meal, warm, hot meal or what have you, and don't have lights, no lights and whatever in the whole area for the people, and no running water, all these, everything, no medicine, no schools. And these people are being held down by militaries that the United States trained, Democrat and Republican. Or this man in president right now, he's doing the same thing Trump did on the international level. He's just a bigger criminal, and Hillary Clinton, all of them ain't nothing but criminals. They're part of imperialism. And the only way to stop them all over the world is revolution. If you don't make revolution, if you don't build your army, if you don't organize your people, educate them, ideologically train them, take over the minds of your people, get all this colonial, white racist philosophy that they pumping us through their schools and other forms of institutions and televisions and other ways they brainwash us and keep us under censorship where we can never see and understand the truth. If you don't re-educate your people, they'll continue to fly backwards. They'll continue to do dumb things. But we have to teach our people not to hate each other, but to love each other, to love your culture, love your history, love Africa. You're not dumb. That's one of the things that Black Power came and kept pushing. When we got African philosophy, African history going, we started telling people about Ghana and Mali and Kemet and Zimbabwe and all the great kingdoms of Africa. And that once we began to show people that we had our own gods in Africa, we had our own religions in Africa, Yoruba, and then the religions in Kemet, you know, where they talk about Aset, what we call Isis and Horus, Osiris. That was Jesus before the white man come up with a Jesus. And when we met Jesus from the white man, it was a slave ship. The name of the first slave ship to bring us over here was called Slave Ship Jesus. And that on the slave ship, the condition was so bad, we were in chains on our neck, chains on our hands, on our feet, and we were laying there, couldn't move, and they stacked us on top of each other like you stack lumber. And the first few people on the bottom, their guts was mashed out, dead. And you had to stay chained to them for as long as it took, a month or however long it took for the slave ship to travel across the Atlantic Ocean. Fathers would take their fingernails and cut their baby's throat or their son's throat because they didn't want them to live with this colonial white man. Mothers would take and hold their children up and bite their little baby's goosebumps out. The condition was so bad that sometimes people would get loose and they would jump overboard, or they would take our little girls, rape them, take sticks and jog it up, and then throw them overboard and watch the sharks eat them and laugh. They went in and when they put us on those, killed us and murdered us on the slave ships, they brought us over here and they sold us. These ain't none of our names, Ricks and Jones and Smith. Whatever white man buy you, that's the name they gave you. And if you spoke your African language, they'd cut your tongue out. We come from Ghana and Mali and great universities throughout Africa, and we could read, write, and very educated. But if they caught us reading, they would poke our eyes out. If they caught you writing, they'd cut your hands off. And these people inside of Africa went down through Africa. Cicero's killed 50, 60 million people. And they made them work and gather diamonds and gold and rubber. And when they gather all this richness, if you didn't gather, they put it on ships and sent it to you. The poorest area of the world began to be richer and richer and richer off of what they were stealing out of Africa. And if the Africans didn't work hard enough, they cut their hands off, cut their feet off, cut their ears off, and killed millions of people doing this, starved them to death. The Rhodes Scholarship, the biggest scholarship the world had known, I think, the European world, was named after Cicero's, a British killer, murderer. He killed 50, 60 million people in Zimbabwe, robbed it for everything, and then named the country Rhodesia. And when he died, he said, I leave this will to educate little white children. And so many white people go to school on that blood money. Bill Clinton went to school on that blood money. And that, so we're Africans in that we recognize that through all of what we've been through right here in the United States, all the different movements got to be linked together. We can't say Black people in the United States. We got to say Africans all over the world, because we're not just here in what's called the United States. We're in Canada. We're in Brazil, 100 million or more. We're in Colombia. We're in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, El Salvador, the Caribbean. We're in Europe. We're in the South Pacific, all down through the South Pacific. And the question is, how do we pull these people together? And many people, Marcus, Du Bois, internationalism, Pan-Africanism, said that we have to come together, Pan-Africanism, find a way to unite all these people ideologically train them, build an organization, and we come together and began to support and fight together for the same thing. And Africa being the base land that we're fighting for, we would be like China. When the Chinese came together, Mao Zedong put a billion together. And now they're together. They got a mighty army. They got a mighty economic system. They got a mighty culture. They got a mighty history and a strong ideology and a powerful military force that don't nobody want to mess with. And that's what we have to do with Africa. We have to come together and do those kinds of things. And that I'll slow up right here because I think I done talked a lot. And I was supposed to wait on you to maybe, if you wanted to.
Well, actually, I did have some questions prepared, but honestly, I was taught by my parents that sometimes, well, most of the times in my life, you learn a lot more just by listening. And I can't tell you the wealth of knowledge that you just put on me today because it was no need for me to ask the question because you gave me all the answers that I would have probably not even know that I needed.
Mm,
So thank you.
mm. Well, I tried, and that I thank you very much.
I love the timeline. I'm glad I didn't ask questions because if I asked questions, I probably would have missed something. So I
Oh,
really appreciate the timeline and the continuation of the story as you told it. So
mm.
thank you.
Well, thank you so much.